All right, guys, welcome back. We are covering a new skill set that we have not done before on this show. It is the skill set of platform engineering. I'm seeing a lot of these roles in my recruitment business, and I brought on an industry expert. His name is Ameen Sherali. He is the principal platform engineer at JetBlue. And Ameen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being on the show. I really appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you guys.
Yeah. So I don't, I see a lot of these tech shows, tech podcasts. They usually don't mention platform engineering. I would love for kind of an expert to define for everyone what exactly is platform engineering.
So I think, yeah, when you go to the tech shows and things around that, there is multiple names used for this profile in general, which is like some people call it DevOps, some people call it SRE, some people call it things. But platform engineering in itself is a little different. What platform engineering really means is basically it does things. It could be multiple spaces. I don't think it's a one size fits all. I don't think it is something that just does everything justice. Um, so platform engineering, if I have to really put it in one space, is it's everything that probably helps support developers to do their thing mostly at that point. Um, it's creating and managing platforms. Um, it's uh, it's basically the expertise of building and managing anything that's around platforms. It could be infrastructure. It could be anything that supports the developers to be able to, develop and deliver their product in general. High level, that's kind of what we do.
Okay, so can you be more specific on that as far as platforms for a developer and how you help, like what
Sure.
exactly you're doing to help them?
So, for example, what does a developer need, right? So the question starts with what does a developer need? They need the core infrastructure to deploy their applications onto. One, they need their observability platforms to monitor what they need to see for their applications or how their applications are performing. That's the second part. They need the CI/CD pipelines to be able to deploy their applications into the Kubernetes clusters. They need their platforms to do their local development work at that point. They need a dev environment that we provide to them. Things like that is kind of what we provide as a platform for them to be able to do their own thing at that point.
Yeah. And so you mentioned SRE and DevOps and how this is similar, but not exactly the same thing. So, what about those two things, SRE and DevOps? How do they kind of fit into platform engineering?
So I think I see DevOps more as a culture. It actually was introduced by Google at some point, and DevOps is more of a culture that I see of. I know back in the day, being a system admin as well, I come from a background of system admin as well. Working with developers was more of, you do your part and pick a bag and throw it on the other side for the developers to do their part. And then they pick it and throw it on the other side of the wall at that point. DevOps is more of that mindset or a culture that kind of breaks that barrier in between these two. It's basically how the developers and the operations guys kind of work hand in hand together at that point. Um, how does platform engineering be separate from DevOps? Is basically we provide the platform for the devs and the operation guys to be able to do their thing in a better, easier, secure, and more reliable fashion now. And
Okay.
when it comes to SREs, I think SREs kind of sits very closely with DevOps as well. SREs kind of do the operational part for developers. SREs do have more technical expertise when compared to the ops guys. They're more developers supporting the operation at that point. So again, more of platform engineering provides the platform for both SREs or the DevOps or the operations or the devs. There are multiple names for it, but it just basically provides a platform for people to do their thing securely, reliably, and quickly as possible.
Yeah. Okay. And then let's talk about essential kind of skills or technologies, like at the very first, like the first things you would say, like, okay, if you don't have this, you're not even going to be considered for platform type roles.
I think it's funny. I feel like tools and technology can be learned. The skill that I think that is most necessary to be a platform engineer is curiosity. You have to be curious about something. You have to be extremely curious, extremely hungry, uh, trying to automate things, trying to make things better. How can I make this better? How can I make this quicker? How can I make this simpler? If you don't have that mindset of making things simple, quick, easy, better, automated, curious about how to fix something, how to make it easier for anybody in general, that probably will define if platform engineering is the right place for you or not at that point. Um, it's actually funny I say this, but because this actually sits well with any engineer in general, but I do understand that with platform engineering, it's a little more high pace at that point. You're moving fast. Things are moving fast. Everyone wants to do their thing, but you're like the roadblock in between most of the people because you're trying to do a lot of balances between, security, networking, and infrastructure, and developers, and you're trying to hop around in four different places at that point. So if you're not curious, hungry to learn, pick, move, and automate things faster, the faster you can get people to do their thing, the better you of a platform engineer you really are at that.
Yeah. But you said the technologies can be learned, but like what are some of the first ones that they do learn in these jobs?
So I think from a job perspective, if someone's looking for a job in platform engineering, the technologies that the companies probably will be asking for is things like IAC. Terraform is kind of a big thing today. So Terraform or OpenTofu, which is the open source version of Terraform, is one option. GitHub Actions is kind of pretty big. I do see a lot of the DevOps and platform engineers and everyone talking about Jenkins, but I feel like Jenkins is kind of I see it slowly fading out of the industry a little bit, and I see a lot more of GitHub Actions coming into picture. So it's something I recommend over Jenkins, though the Jenkins skill is amazing to have. But GitHub Actions seems to be more of the industry standard at this point. Observability platforms is a big part. You should be able to spin up and manage an observability platform, how they integrate with all of your infrastructure for reporting, copying data, moving data, and things around that data point. Um, Docker is another skill for CI/CD. You need to build your container images and things around that. Kubernetes is heavy. I don't think uh, I personally am a big fan of Kubernetes. I think it's probably the best thing in general. And I know a lot of the industry standard is moving away from the virtual machines to more Kubernetes and Docker containers and things around that there. Python is a good to have because automation kind of comes into play, uh, especially in the era of AI and data engineering and stuff. Python is a pretty big contender in general for automation and things around that. Um, I think knowledge of YAML and JSON always helps. I think it's more of a basic skill to have. I would say, you should know how to just write things with YAML, JSON, YQ, and things around that. CI/CD tools, I do think a CD tool is important. From what I've seen industry-wide, Argo and Flux are kind of the primary two contenders, but you can know any CD tool is more of standardized. If you know something, you can always transition to the other one. I don't think it's that bad though, but a CD tool in some form. High level, that's probably the skills I would put out there.
Yeah. And right now in 2025, what is the kind of best way to pick up some of these skills? Is it just kind of like on the job starting out, or are there kind of educational platforms that can teach you some of these?
So me myself as a person, I think I learn something new every day. I if I use LinkedIn Learning to a certain extent, it's provided by the company. I do Pluralsight. I was a big fan of Linux Academy, which then got bought over by the other company. I forget the name, but I can find that for you. But I've learned all of my skills starting from Linux Academy. This was back in 2007, 2008 is where I started this off. And I've been a big fan of Linux Academy, whatever. And I think Pluralsight bought them up. So it's kind of everything's coming to Pluralsight at this point. So I do use Pluralsight and LinkedIn Learning a lot today. That's
Mhm.
kind of where I do most of my skills training. Udemy is a good one if you want to kind of do these 0 to 100 courses. There's a lot of these, 0 to hero is what they call it, or 0 to 100 courses is what they call it. Uh, I do think you need to come in with some basic knowledge. Like Terraform is a language, it's HCI, HCL. You have to kind of learn the language. You just cannot come in and be like, I'm going to learn on the job. I think some basic knowledge of Terraform is good. Obviously, you will build and hone that to a certain extent on the job itself, but at least knowing how to use Terraform probably is an important part. The same thing with GitHub Actions and things around that there.
And those the last two you mentioned, Terraform, GitHub Action, where would they get those skills?
There are a lot of courses on Pluralsight and LinkedIn Learning. There are
Okay.
also like these full level courses on Udemy as well that you can take. Um, I had taken a 0 to hero Python course as well on Udemy. I liked that course better, so I had done that on Udemy. But yeah.
Okay. So even at your level, I mean, the principle is obvious. We're gonna talk about what that entails as well. But even at your level, you're still constantly doing continuing education, correct?
100%. Um, I I still run into these conversations where some people tell me about how they are an expert in Kubernetes, and I don't believe in the fact that you're an expert in Kubernetes. You're just learning something new every day. Kubernetes is so big and so complex that being an expert at Kubernetes is something of at least for me, that's an overstatement. I like to keep learning something new every day. I hop into one operational incident or something, and I probably learn something very small and new about Kubernetes almost every day.
Wow. Okay. So I want to talk about a little bit about your career progression. We've had a lot of guests that have bounced to different companies, got hired at a higher level, kind of like that. You've been with one company from intern to principal. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? I mean, what were some of the strategies to kind of keep leveling up within the same company?
So the reason I stayed with JetBlue for so long is the culture of JetBlue is beautiful. I've actually made friends, like family in general. So it's kind of, for me, it's an important part to actually have coworkers who really work well and gel well with you. It makes work fun. So that's kind of why I've stayed here for so long. The second part also is I've grown my career throughout. And I don't think I ever had a strategy to grow. I just was, as I said, I was always curious to just, learn something new in general. The way I started at JetBlue was really I started off with somebody who was at the airport plugging printers at Orlando at some point.
Uh,
Uh, that's kind of where I started getting curious. And then, the next step was obviously I moved into a sysadmin as a Linux engineer, started getting more hands-on with Linux. You do all this as education, but education is one part, but hands-on in the job is kind of a different ballgame altogether. You really learn more, I feel like, on the job itself. That's where I started getting more curious. Did my Linux admin. I was more of an intern as a Linux admin at some point. Moved up to an engineer. I did become a manager for a little bit. I was managing a team, and then I feel like my expertise were more in need for the company at that point as a technical person. So moved into more of the principal position at that point. Um, I think I had all of my reasons to move to principal, and I don't regret it at all. I've been doing a lot more of technology, which is fun as well.
So we haven't had anyone that has had a principal title currently on the show before. Why don't you kind of go into what that entails?
So a principal title is somebody that is a leader, but a tech leader. You're making more technical decisions. You're steering the company. At least that pillar of yours is what for the company is what you're steering in the direction on the technical side. Like for example, the one technical decision that I think I had made, which I really enjoy at this point, is bringing the whole ISE culture in JetBlue. That was fun. And things like these are decisions you make. You are not necessarily the person doing all the technical stuff. You're mostly leading the engineers to do the right thing on the technical part of the world at that point.
Yeah. So basically you were managing a team of people and you felt
That
that
was.
there was kind of a lot of in I mean, it just wasn't a best use of your skill set, correct? Like doing kind of reports on people's I don't know, like careers basically.
I actually love the manager position. Working with people is fun. I'll be honest. In itself, manager position itself is a skill as well. And I personally love the position. But at that point, I feel like there was so much happening in JetBlue, especially with COVID and stuff. I decided that maybe my skills are better used in the technical side of the house. So that's kind of where I made my decision to move more on the technical side.
Yeah. So, but as principal, I mean, how does it work? Like, is anyone like, no one's directly answering to you, but you're also kind of shaping the technical direction of the company? That's how
Correct.
it's
So
working?
I think as a principal, I have nobody reporting to me. There's no people reporting to me in general. But I kind of work with all the teams to a certain extent. So I work with all the engineers from all the other teams in general together to kind of drive everybody in one direction. Um, it's more of you steering, like, there are 4 or 5 pillars under the platform space, and you're trying to steer all the pillars to work together in a common direction rather than everybody just doing their own thing in the silo. Um, the good part of a principle is basically you kind of figure out how everybody can collaborate together to kind of run towards a common goal, if I have to call it that way.
What's up, guys? Hope you're enjoying the episode. Real quick, I just want to let you know we now have the Tech Career Accelerator for anyone that watches. We're going to get you a job via updating your LinkedIn, fixing your resume, running you through mock interviews, and I work with you until you get hired. So it is 100% success rate. Check it out, link below. Thanks.
The infrastructure is code. So basically, how you build infra. I know back in the day, people would do portal flicks and things around that to spin up infra. Um, I actually joke about this. I'm more of a no ClickOps behavior believer in general. Like ClickOps is something I'm really not a big fan of. And I think the reason I say ClickOps is not fun is because, and what is ClickOps? If I could really explain what ClickOps really means, is things like clicking on the portal.
Mhm.
Um, you can spin all of your infra up by clicking buttons in the portal. But it's not necessarily what you want to do. And that's where Terraform comes into play. The CI/CD part of it comes into play, and things like that come into play. Once you've introduced that culture into something, it kind of reduces the amount of issues you can run in with, loss of standardization, people doing their own thing. You kind of have that same goal that everybody's working in the same direction because you have a standard template of doing something. Um, Something that we introduced into JetBlue, and we've been doing that fairly for a few months at this point already.
Yeah. Okay. And then, everyone's favorite topic, money. Now, what are we talking? Give us a range. Platform engineer, senior platform engineer. What roughly are we talking in the industry that you've seen?
I think obviously the spectrum is pretty big depending on the skills you're actually working with. But I think on an average, if I have to really say, engineer level salary probably starting would be around 100, 120. Um, Sorry, the engineer. The senior engineers would be around the 150-ish range. And anything above that comes as a manager, which again changes things. But usually I've seen the engineer and the senior engineers is what the salary range is usually is between the 100 to a 170, depending on what position you're in.
Yeah. And then what industries typically use kind of the platform engineer title? Obviously, aviation, I've seen in some big tech companies as well.
I've been
What
seeing it
else?
a lot more. It's being more adapted in general at this point. I've seen a lot of these startups kind of post out positions for platform engineers. I've seen these positions obviously in aviation. I've seen some of these positions even in the bank spaces as well.
Yeah.
Some in the health sector spaces as well. So I've been seeing these positions. Now, as I said, uh, the roles and responsibilities kind of remain the same, but some people call it DevOps, some people call it platform, some people call it something and things around that. So the name is mostly different, but it's kind of in the end more of the skill set itself or kind of is almost common at that point.
Yeah. So when you're interviewing people, when you're considering people to hire, you're not so much concerned with that title because it could be pretty interchangeable depending on the company.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
As I said, the platform engineering in general, like a platform engineer doesn't necessarily is one person doing one thing. It actually is one person doing one thing, but the skill set of this engineer is so vast. Um, you will use a part of your skill set in every job you go to. Like, for example, you go to job A, you can be probably hired as a principal, as a platform engineer for observability, and you probably will be doing more Grafana stack and observability and how the data gets to the stack and things around that. You could be hired as a platform engineer for infrastructure dedicated. So you'll only be doing infrastructure at that point. There could be somebody who's hired as a platform engineer for CI/CD stuff. So this there's a lot of range of skill sets that you have, and then you specialize in the field that you want to, and then you move in that direction. Um, just because I think as we move more to the cloud, things are becoming so compact in the cloud space that a lot of these platform engineers do a lot more than just like back in the day. I remember there was networking teams that would do just networking that the VM teams would not know anything about, or the database teams would not know anything about what the networking team is doing. Now, I think at this point, the platform engineering becomes such a space where all of these platform engineers with their different expertise kind of work so well together. That's kind of what makes it more compact and more easy to function around at that point.
Yeah. And why don't you just cover one thing you've mentioned a few times? I see it on job descriptions all the time. Observability and monitoring. I
Mhm.
see that in SREs. I see that in platform engineers that I work in the recruitment space. Why don't you just kind of give people an overview of what those two terms actually mean?
So observability and monitoring is pretty much your eyes into the system. So single pane of glass is what they use as a term pretty common in companies, which is basically, you look at one single pane of glass and you know end to end what's going on. If you have an incident bridge, you want to hop on, look at one pane of glass and be like, this is the point where it's failing. So observability basically includes that part there. So it's how you get all of the data from your infrastructure devices, your network devices, your security devices, your application logs, your application metrics. All of this kind of comes into one space and kind of is a single space that you look for what you want to look for. It could be metrics for your application ingress. It could be logs for your application. It could be logs for your firewalls. It could be logs for your network devices. It could be logs for your VM consumptions. I mean, the metrics for your VM consumptions or the Kubernetes cluster consumptions. Observability in general is just basically you being able to see what you're doing and what's happening and where is something breaking in general.
Yeah. And, why don't you talk about like what would be an example of something that a platform engineer would be working on and like as kind of like a real world application that would make sense for people like it doesn't have to be aviation, it could be aviation, could be anything, like something that people would understand that someone like you would have worked on um, as a
I'll
platform
give you
engineer.
a few examples. I think one, for example, is the observability platform, since we're talking about observability. Um, the team actually built up the whole observability platform for us, which then we then provided as a service for, the devs to be able to, look at their logs and metrics on something. It's something that the infra ops team or the overall operations team can look at for them to be able to build their dashboards, monitor what they need to monitor, keep their eyes on class to see what's breaking, how's things breaking. So we built a platform that then is used by these customers of ours, which pretty much is the ops team, the dev teams, and everybody else at that point. This is one example. The other example is setting up something like I'll take the ISC as an example, infrastructure as code. You kind of you have to work with security to kind of build the guardrails that you want to build around. You build your templates for what something looks like in general, and then you provide it as a service for people to be able to use at that point. So I can provide my core infrastructure that is probably available for the devs to be able to deploy their applications into. The other thing that one of our teams at JetBlue also does is, building the CI/CD pipelines, which is through GitHub Actions, and then people can deploy their applications by themselves within the checks and bounds of what JetBlue needs at that point. So I feel like projects of platform engineering overall is you build a platform that is reusable by anybody in the company, depending on which scope it comes into at that point.
Okay, and then one thing I definitely want to ask you, um, for these careers, as far as AI's influence, AI, is it helping you currently? Is it potentially going to take some of these careers away in the SRE, DevOps, platform roles? I mean, what are you seeing right now?
I see. I know there's a lot of fear in the industry about AI at this point. I know a lot of people kind of worrying about losing jobs. I really see the AI as a friend. Um, it's um, it's basically helping you look at data and providing you with answers rather than you. Let's give you an example. Like I don't know as a Linux admin, one of the things I would have to do is I'd have to go into the logs and keep reading one each of these logs to see what exactly is breaking and what is the log telling me at that point. I've been seeing a lot of these new things coming up where AI explains to you what the error is and what you can do to fix it. Um, this is something I've been reading about, and that's kind of where I've seen. I was reading about something on Medium, and it was about this company that was implementing this thing called K8s GPT. Um, what is K8s GPT? It's basically like a chat GPT, but for applications within your Kubernetes clusters.
Mm.
Um, what it does is it's reading your logs, it's kind of finding the errors and giving you the output of what this could mean and what you can do to fix it. Um, it kind of makes your mean time to mitigation really quick because you don't have to go digging into it's like digging a needle in a haystack. Going into the logs is like pretty much going looking for a needle in a haystack at that point. You don't, as a human, necessarily have to go in and kind of do that. The application talks to you of what exactly is doing at that point and what's happening at that point and what can you do to fix it at that point. I personally think it's going to make it better. It makes jobs easier, not necessarily you lose jobs. Um, Again, I think different industries is different, but at least in the platform space, I don't see it to be more of an enemy, but more of a friend for us at that point.
Mhm. So make you more efficient, but
Correct.
probably couldn't. I mean, just for you to intertwine all those technologies you've mentioned, I think we're a bit off from AI replacing all that. So,
True.
um, okay, and then why don't we talk about? I do want to talk about the aviation industry too, and just what you like about it. But um, real quick, who do you think? Obviously, you hire people in this space. You've seen successful interviews, you've seen unsuccessful interviews, you've seen careers go really well, you've seen careers flop. Um, Anything as far as what are some common denominators of people that have worked really well in your space, people that haven't, people that have flopped, who should consider maybe taking a look at these careers for someone that's not already in tech?
So I think when I interview people, the one thing I'm looking for is again, I keep repeating this word, but I keep looking for curiosity. Um, how much has somebody, been interested in this whole space? How curious is somebody? Does somebody have a home lab that they're trying to, mingle around with to see how they can actually do something new? Um, I've come across people who've done really interesting things on their home labs. Somebody's actually spun up their own observability platform using the whole Grafana stack and monitoring. So this person had actually deployed a Kubernetes cluster on their home network. They were monitoring all of their devices, the smart devices in the house, and actually managing it through that. This was one I was really impressed by that one. Um, I'm interested to do things like that, but I feel like sometimes time is a factor. But this person had actually got all that set up, and just the curiosity with which the person was explaining this was commendable. I think it was very nice. Um, uh, the person obviously got another position somewhere else that they preferred, and they moved on to something else. But that being said, that doesn't deter me from keep talking to people. Like I don't think I'm looking for you to have skills of something to the T. Like if I say I want you to know Terraform, I don't want you to know Terraform to be able to just do everything that I want you to do. You just have to be curious to be able to, figure things out. Curiosity is what I'm constantly looking for. Basic knowledge of skills is a requirement. I would not say if somebody just says comes and says I'm curious, that's not enough.
Right.
You need to know what your basic skill is and how you've actually used your curiosity to do something that's interesting. Or maybe an idea of how you would want to implement something somewhere that makes things better for the dev teams or the security teams or whoever in general at that point. Uh, that's what I look for in interviews. Um, the more curious you are, the more interested in learning, the more you move up, the more you move to better paths. That's how I think of it as, um, at least in this space. The technical skills learning, I mean, technology is changing every second day. Um, so I don't think you will ever be a perfect technology person. You have to keep learning every day. Otherwise, you become obsolete at some point if you don't move on with the technology itself at that point. So if you're curious enough to learn the new skills, then that's kind of what's primary for me.
Okay, yeah, because it would pretty much be impossible to be a 5 out of 5 star expert in all of the things you've listed. I mean, you wouldn't have you wouldn't have enough time, right?
Yep. Yep. There's nobody who's an expert. We as humans just keep learning something new every day. It doesn't have to be in the tech space. It could just be in your personal life spaces at that point.
Yeah. And then what about as far as starters? Obviously, you know, you got to start and scale quickly in this industry. Any advice for people is like who should consider these type of careers? So obviously the curiosity, anything else?
I don't think who should. There's no who should. If you are interested, you should. It's as simple as that. I don't think there should be anything deterring you to apply to such positions or be interested in pursuing a career in this direction itself. Um, be prepared for learning a lot. Be prepared for constantly evolving. Be prepared for putting the time in. Um, the best of engineers put their time in. It doesn't matter if it is on their job or in their home life or in their trainings or whatever. You have to put your time in. That's kind of how you grow and learn. Um, but I don't think there's a set of people who can apply for this position. It really can be anybody. I don't. It doesn't have to be somebody who's had a background in something. You can be anybody that knows and understands something, has learned something, and they can actually apply. The
Nice.
one good starting point I would recommend though for freshers who are trying to venture into this industry, um, cloud engineers is a big position that's been around. It's a good starting point, I feel. Um, Platform engineers is a little more of, they do a lot more, but you might have seen a lot more of these cloud engineer positions that keep popping up.
Mhm.
This is a good starting point if somebody's coming from a non-tech world and wants to kind of introduce themselves into something. Learn some skills, start off with something in the cloud engineering space. That's a good space to start, I would say.
Yeah, and then slowly start exposing yourself to some of the
Yep,
technologies that you listed and you mentioned, right? And
yep,
if they start to click, then maybe you kind of take a step up to a platform or DevOps or SRE type role, right?
100%. Yeah. As I told you, I started off at an airport plugging printers. So
Yeah.
I don't think and that's why I say there's nobody who has to have a skill to start. If you're curious and if you're interested, you should start. It's how I keep it as.
Yeah, and before we go, I wanted you to just kind of shed some light on the aviation industry. Obviously, people think of aviation jobs, you think of the pilot, the air, flight attendants. Um, you don't think of it as being a tech company, but the technical challenges are immense and pretty, extreme as far as you when things go down, that could cost lives, right? So, um,
100%.
why don't you give us some, I don't know, some insights of the aviation industry, some of the challenges, the technical challenges that are kind of consistent in the industry, and um, what that's like.
I think that you are on point with that. When people think of aviation, they think of pilots and flights and ground ops and people around that. But there's a lot that goes on behind it. Getting all of these things to work together, like the pilots on an aircraft, the in-flights on an aircraft, people on the ground, people in maintenance. There is so much that goes on around this that keeping all of this together plays a very important part. And that's kind of where all the technology piece comes in. Uh, the technical teams actually work with all the airport people, the maintenance people, the in-flight people, the airports, the actual stations as well. Like, for example, you have to work with the stations all together. Um, from you going into the airport, checking in the mobile app, or even going into the kiosk to check in, to being able to book an application, to being able to make sure you're able to check your bag in, to tracking your bag. That is your as you as a flyer experience. Then also comes the experience of people at the airports. For example, the pilot's experiences with their iPads, the in-flight experiences for the purchases they make, all the safety pieces that they do, the safety checks around that, the maintenance data. There is so much that actually happens, and it kind of gets lost in the wind
Yeah.
because obviously aviation in the end is trying to get people from point A to point B. That's kind of what people think of it as. Um, it's a very challenging environment, and that's what makes it more interesting is how challenging it is because that kind of what builds your curiosity because there's so many avenues to kind of go and figure out on. Um, so aviation industry is, I think, it's a great place to, for me at least. It's a very high paced industry. Um, Keeps you on your toes most of the times, which it's an internal joke. We just keep talking about that. Um, the other part also with the aviation industry, it's a 24/7 job, especially in the space that we work in because we have to make sure systems are up and running. It's a 24/7 job. You can get called anytime as an engineer to get support, be on call for support for something. Um, as JetBlue, we only have, I think, a 2 hour downtime because we fly in the air all the time.
Mhm.
So we have our systems running most of the time at that point. So our systems have to be up, systems have to be reliable, supported, and just running mostly all the time there. This is kind of where I would probably interject all those skills that I added in is, observability comes into play because I cannot be on the computer for 24 hours. So something has to tell me something going on. So that's where the observability piece comes in. You have dashboards, alerts, and monitoring metrics around that actually, they talk to you, you don't talk to them, kind of a thing at that point. Um, and then the reliability factor comes in because you have to make sure your applications are up and running all the time reliably. Uh, so there's a lot that goes on, but overall, the aviation industry it's a fun industry. Um, there are good perks on it. Um, the perks are fun with the aviation industry. You do get your flight benefits and things around that. It's a high paced job. It is a 24/7 job, and it is tiring for sure.
Yeah. What are some of those flight benefits? It's free flights in the U.S. domestic and a partner, or
You
how
do
does
get
that work?
some free flight benefit for sure, but it's mostly standby. It's not confirmed tickets, so
Yeah.
it's more of if you get on it, you get on it. Otherwise, you don't get on it. Kind of thing at that point.
And discounted corporate discounts for
Yes,
most
you do get
flights
corporate discounts for some flights as well. Yep.
could be a good
The benefits
industry.
are fun, and I think it's also one reason why people love joining the aviation industry is because just the whole love for travel. Um, it's actually one reason why I have stayed in this industry for so long is also because of the love for travel. I love to travel. We travel a lot in general. I actually have a friend who works for us at JetBlue, and I think he's on a travel right now, and he's in his 98th country at this point.
Wow.
So he's traveled all over the place as well. Yeah.
Wow. So he's really taking advantage of those benefits.
Yep.
Huh?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. That's that's obviously something to consider when you're evaluating a couple opportunities. Like you said, maybe the banking industry or big tech. If all things are equal and you're a big traveler, then something like this can make a lot of sense, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really depending. It really depends on what you want. It's not necessarily what the industry provides. It's what you want. If you like the banking space, which obviously has there's a good amount of learning in the banking space as well, because banking deals with a lot of payments and stuff. So there's an industry there as well that you don't know of, and that there's so much to learn there probably as well. Um, there's a medical field which also deals with a lot of data in general, which again is an important field as well. Aviation has a very different set of data that we deal with at that point. So everything has its own benefits. I think it's a starting point. You figure out what you enjoy at that point for all the people trying to start up in this field a little.
Yeah, and it's just incredible and people don't even think about all of the technical challenges that someone like yourself is. They just want to get on the flight and get off. But for that to happen, someone like you has to obviously be making sure everything is getting you there safely.
There's an army of people that the app developers, they have to make sure their app is up and running most of the time. It's absolutely beautiful. The observer team has to make sure the alerting and monitoring is in place. The reliability team has to make sure that applications are up and running all the time. We have to make sure all of our environment is securely, set up correctly, secure, reliable, and things around that. So there's an army of people that actually goes behind you just picking a bag, booking a flight, picking a bag, checking in, going and sitting in an airport and reaching to destination B. There's an army right behind that, all the way from tech to maintenance to in-flight to pilots to the ground off people. And there's so much that actually goes on in the aviation industry.
And then it's like when you talk to someone like you, it's like you're amazed that, I mean, how many thousands of flights go off every day without a hit, I mean, yeah, there are delays, but
No, there's a lot of people actually working really hard to make sure everything is on time and everything reaches in places. Now, weather is not in our control, weather happens. Maintenance is part of the job. When you have a machine, it kind of breaks, so you have to fix it. These are all part of the industry itself overall.
So interesting and things that
I can see you're amazed. Yeah,
it's like frightening to think about all the moving parts behind the scenes that are getting you from point A to point B.
Yep. And I'm guilty of that as well. I'm in the aviation industry, so I know all these moving parts. But I could also be a customer for somebody else that doesn't understand how much goes on behind something else because I'm not in that industry, possibly as well.
Yeah. No. Exactly. So, well, I mean, this was great. I mean, it's great that, we finally had someone kind of in your skill set to come on and shed some light on exactly what these roles are, because people are probably starting to see them a little more and more. Like you said, some of those titles are changing. Maybe, people have seen DevOps probably, maybe even some SRE, but now they're probably seeing a lot more platform engineering. So thanks so much for coming on and shedding some light on everything for us, Ameen.
It was my pleasure. It was nice to be on the show, and good luck for all the people looking for a job in their career. And it was nice talking to you, Chris.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad we made this happen. And next time you get on that flight, just think about the army of men like Ameen that are making sure you're getting there safe. So
yep, there's a big army of all the men and women who really spend time and put their effort into this. It is amazing how much of work people do to just like now, if I have to go back and think, when I get onto a flight to get to somewhere, I just know how much of work has actually gone in from me just going from point A to point B.
It's crazy. Well, thanks again, Ameen. And yeah, we will have a kind of supplementary series on platform engineering and career paths. I'm going to do a kind of a solo video on this very soon. So definitely take a look at that. And Ameen, hey man, thanks again.
Thank you, Chris. Nice talking to you, and good luck, everybody.
Yep. All right, we'll see you guys.
Bye-bye.